All right, everyone. Now we have to talk about the sham impeachments of Donald Trump and the effort by Marjorie Taylor Greene and, by the way, Elise Stefanik to expunge those impeachments. In a House where you have a fairly narrow Republican majority, you probably can get them through. Stefanik's bill, link in the description, archived, of course. I happen to agree with the assessment. Stefanik's bill is a little bit more difficult because there are some Republicans that are in swing areas that might not want to vote in favor of expunging the impeachment because of Stefanik's language, which heavily insinuates that the 2020 election wasn't exactly perfect and that J6 was not an insurrection. Some Republicans will get, cold feet voting through such a resolution. By the way, I don't believe that this necessarily has to do anything with the Senate, so there where you've got Romney and Cornyn and certain others, you don't have to deal with them. Marjorie Taylor Greene, supposedly a rabid Nazi, somehow is being more measured in her language. At least hers is likely to pass. Now, what was Trump impeached for? That's the important part. The first time that Donald Trump was impeached was on the lie. It was based on the hoax, the predication of the belief that he was involved with Russian election interference. So his team was involved with trying to steal the 2016 election, and Russia was involved, and Trump is a treasonous, seditious rat. But we now know that none of that actually happened, now don't we? There was no Russian influence in the 2016 election beyond the normal troll farm shit that happens in literally every election in the Western world anyway. Russia involves itself, Britain involves itself, hell, Algeria probably has a troll farm influencing U.S. policy. It's natural. The U.S. does this too. The U.S. Air Force years and years ago, this is 2008 or something, had a bot farm of about 10,000 sock Facebook accounts in order to try to drive public opinion with regards to certain military things. Voting on a poll. That's easy. You load a bunch of bots, and the U.S. military definitely has all of the resources needed for that because it can rob you of your tax cash at any time or just inflate the currency. The Fed is their friend. So the first impeachment, of course, it should of necessity be expunged because it was based on false premises. We know them to be false. We have nothing but evidence in favor of that being the case. There is no evidence whatsoever that anyone other than Paul Manafort and then before the campaign itself was in any communication with Russia at any time. The only influence over the election didn't involve the Trump campaign. It involved trolls, which are not even, by the way, necessarily linked to the Kremlin at all. Although there's a good possibility, let's fucking face it. The second impeachment was about J6. So in the wee hours of Trump's presidency, as he prepares to go and take boxes of largely unclassified material back to the Mar-a-Lago, he was impeached a second time. And this time it was because he fomented insurrection. Again, though, if you listen to what Trump said, and you establish what Trump did, and you look at the findings of the J6 committee, partisan as though it was, over the course of several years of nonstop investigation, finding nothing legally actionable to refer charges for, which is exactly what J6 did, well, then the impeachment doesn't matter. An impeachment is just basically the House is claiming that you're guilty of something. The Senate then has to convict you. Of course, the Senate cleared Trump both times. Many presidents have been impeached before. Now, Bill Clinton was impeached. Somehow, Bush-Obama never did, despite doing far worse than Clinton did and far worse than most of the other presidents that were ever impeached for one thing under the sun or another. Certainly Donald Trump. And they got away with it. Nobody has ever been successfully prosecuted by the U.S. Senate. Nixon came the closest. He resigned before that was possible. He saw the writing on the wall, even though, again, some of the things that Nixon did that he was impeached for pale in comparison to what we're seeing currently, and certainly under Bush and Obama, there were worse things going on. The Fast and Furious comes to mind. Katrina comes to mind. The New Age carpetbagging under W killed tens of thousands of people, and internally displaced many more. No impeachment necessary. Everything's fine. After all, 9/11. The House needs to expunge the impeachments because they're based on false premises. So they never should have happened in the first place. Congress can, by the way, get away with simply claiming ignorance and saying, well, yeah, we're gonna expunge the impeachment. We did not know what we now know at the time. A reasonable person would. I was talking about it. Other commentators were, but Congress, they're completely oblivious individuals. These people are oblivious on what's going on around them. Just expunge the impeachments. By the way, the House GOP would be nuts not to do so. They might bounce Stefanik's bill, and then maybe someone else can proffer it in a different worded form that's a little bit less incendiary, potentially, for the purposes of the swing state GOPers, because, trust me, GOP, you're going to lose the House in the upcoming election unless some major sea change happens. Be best if you limit the hemorrhage as much as possible. It'd be funny. Imagine Trump is reelected and on day one he gets re-impeached on both counts by a majority Democrat House or something like that. At this point, because civic precedence for 250 years has been tossed in the trash can twice, I have no reason to believe that wouldn't be the case, by the way. But yes, it would be a good move politically, number one. It's a necessary move because you know at the very least the first impeachment does not pass the smell test in any way. We know that the claims of Russian influence in 2016 involving the Trump campaign are categorically and objectively false. We are aware of this. Repeated investigations have shown this. He was impeached anyway for it, despite the fact that not all of that info was out yet at the time the impeachment occurred many years ago. In the second impeachment, it was predicated on Trump trying to start an insurrection. There was no insurrection on January 6th. There was a peaceful protest that turned into a riot involving a small proportion of the people that Trump supposedly said to take over the Capitol, hold the Capitol hostage, and the troops will roll in, MAGA forever, I'm the new emperor. That's supposedly what Trump said, but I've watched his January 6th speech. He says nothing of the sort. He encourages people to march peaceably, had predicated the entire thing on asking for more security and the deployment of the local guard, actually, because he said, look, there's going to be a lot of people there, there's going to be a lot of emotions, people might get out of hand. Nancy Pelosi and others turned him down repeatedly, despite that assistance being offered. It was then offered the day of, it was turned down again. We know this. There was no attempt at an insurrection. Most of the people on J6 are still being held in solitary for non-violent crimes. Trespass, vandalism, destruction of public property, indecent exposure. Some of them were pooping in the aisles of Congress. Not that it changed the smell any. Those are misdemeanors, dude. Some of these people are still there, even creating albums, reciting the Pledge of Allegiance with Donald himself, who is, by the way, paying many of those legal bills. Supposedly he skinflinted them. That doesn't seem to actually be the case. So, the House should definitely vote in favor of that. Whether the slim majority of GOP can hold the line enough to actually pull it off is another story. That'll probably come up for a vote. I expect Marjorie Taylor Greene's resolution to pass basically on a partisan line. It's not incendiary, and we can establish 100% that the impeachment was a sham. With the second one, there are still some Republicans that magically believe that Trump tried to overthrow the U.S. government. The lawfully elected Biden administration was almost stopped from taking control. It would have been funny if that had happened because, at least the economy would still be functional. By evil Donald, devious Don wanted to make himself the first American dictator, since Abraham Lincoln at least. Razor Fist, by the way, watch his Abe Lincoln video, pretty fun. They need to be expunged because they're improper. They were purely partisan. They're nonsensical. They make absolutely no sense, the claims that are being made. That's about all. Peace out.